You're listening to Success Unleashed, where we show contractors how to grow a 7- or 8-figure business. My name is Garrett Bake, and I've helped over 1,000 contractors and trade business owners just like you put the people, processes, and plan in place to create ultimate freedom. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Garrett Bake, the founder of the American Contractor Network and the Build Pro system. Today we have another special guest on the show, which I'm really excited. He's already come to one of our workshops and has given his time, his energy, and his knowledge to members of our community. So I'm really excited to get him finally on the podcast. This man travels more than a lot of people that I know, but I'm really excited he's here. So our guest today is Chuck Staszkiewicz.
Oh, you got it.
Nailed it. Nailed it. So Chuck was the owner of All Hours Plumbing. He started it in 2011, and we'll get into more of that backstory here in a minute. But he exited in 2023 for an 8-figure deal. Now, there's a couple reasons I want to bring him in. One, because I love Chuck and his background. But two, is to really talk about that process of, well, how do you get to the point of selling a business, right? We've thought about it, all of us, in some way, shape, or form, but what does it take to get to that point? And so we're going to dive into that and a lot more. But Chuck, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. It was an interesting journey. 12 years. Started in 2011 and exited in 2023, August of 2023. And it was, I didn't start the business with a plan to exit. My plan started about 2 years before I actually exited. And it was more of, let's see what it's worth. I grew it from 0 to $20 million a year in sales, top line revenue with 130 employees, bought another company, similar business, tucked it in. And, I was kind of been in the trades for 25 years, and I was like, let's just see. And then, when I first had that thought 2 years prior to the exit, they told me a ridiculous number. Like, I thought I was worth way more. And I went through the process with a broker, and he's like, yeah, this is what you're worth. And he's like, I can get you that tomorrow. And I'm like, shocked, right? Like, I mean, it was a fraction of what I actually sold for. So, but it gave me a baseline, right? Like, I knew where I was, and I knew where I wanted to go. And now it was just reverse engineering and getting there.
I love it. I love it. You gave him a little teaser, and I actually want to go back to the beginning, right? Yeah. Because I love everyone to hear each individual's personal journey. Like, how did you get there, right? So you're originally from Jersey, right? Somehow you ended up in Utah, right? And started a plumbing business. So talk about that. What was that whole thing like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back even further. It's I'm like most contractors, right? Didn't do well in school. Great, showing up and working 100 hours a week, and I can turn a wrench. I'm very mechanically sound. I still work on my own stuff, even though I don't enjoy it as much anymore. But so I barely graduated high school. I wasn't going to go to college. I think I did a semester in college, and it was not worth my time at all. And then, I started in the food industry because I was getting paid underneath the table, right? And it was a good way to make cash, and I could work 60 hours a week, and make a decent living. And then a plumber would come in every single day and get coffee. And one weekend he said to me, or one day he said to me, I need some help this weekend. You interested? And I said, sure, yeah, I'll come check it out. And we worked for like 6 hours, did a whole repipe in a basement. And when we were done, he paid me like $250. And I'm like, hold on, man, like, you gave me too much. He's like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, well, how much did you charge for this job? And he's like, $3,500. And I'm like, how much were parts? And he's like, like $400. And I'm like, so wait, you made close to $3,000 in 8 hours, or less than 8 hours? And he's like, yeah. I was like, sign me up. And that was it. Like, I was ready to go. And within 6 months, I was doing work for friends, right? Like, I had a side hustle going on within 6 months. And then, I really put all efforts into my career. I gave it everything that I could, right? I stopped doing, the fun and stopped, socializing as much. I was like, this is my career. This is my college time. Like, I need to focus. And that's what I did. And I think it took me about 2.5 years, and I was making decent money. Got my license, and then so I was like 23 when I started. 30, I started having a social life about 4 years after getting into it again, and I've always loved to snowboard. So I started snowboarding again, and I came out for a ski vacation in 2008, February of 2008 to Utah. I jumped off the plane and I saw, the valley, and then I saw how close we were to the resorts, and I told all my friends then and there, I'm like, I'm done, I'm moving, and they're like, you're crazy. Like I had a business on the side as well as working for someone full time, and I was doing really well. Like I was making great money at the time, and my friends are all like, you're crazy, and I said, no, I'm moving. And I went home after the ski trip, and in 6 months I was here. I closed up the business, packed up everything I had, and I moved out here, bought my first house. That was September of 2008. And then I worked for a company for a few years, and I was consistently like top 4 of their sales guys, right? Like they had about 14 plumbers, and I was consistently top 4. So I worked for them for about 2 years, just thinking I'd work for somebody and not work for myself for a while and have more free time. And I did. I skied like 80 days a year. For those first 2 years. And then, I was still making a decent living. I was making close to what I was making working for someone back home. And then they kind of got a little strict on me, and I'm like just about any other entrepreneur out there, I'm not a good employee, right? I'm good. Like I'll overwork most of the part, but I want to feel rewarded, right? Like I want to feel a part of it, feel a part of the growth, and things didn't work out, and they ended up firing me.
Wow.
And, it was an interesting time because I found out that I was going to have my first child. And it was like, okay, and if everybody that was in business or remembers 2008, we all know what we were going through. So I couldn't find a job after they let me go for more than $16 an hour. And so I took one as a master plumber, been in the industry for 10 years. I took one for $16 an hour. And I said, I'll just prove myself. And I'll never forget, I can't say who it was that I worked for, but I'll never forget that I had a 90-day probationary period or whatever, and they brought me in for my review. And they sat me down, and I always tracked my numbers. Even as an employee, I always tracked what I was doing. I just built that routine. And they sat me down, and they're like, oh, Chuck, we're so happy to have you here. You're a great employee, blah, 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 this and that. And like, we want to just, let you know that you're doing phenomenal, and you're doing like $713 an hour. And I said, well, you're close. This is the actual number, because I knew it right then. I was like 730 billable hour, and that's in 2011. So I knew I was the top dog there. I knew it, right? And I didn't know the guy's actual numbers that was underneath me, but I knew I was for sure blowing it out the water. And they said, we're really excited. We'd like to offer you $18 an hour. And I said, I can't do that. I said, I'm about to have a kid. Like I've got bills to pay. I said, I can't do that. I said, you got to get me at least 25 an hour. Right. I don't think that's a lot to ask for billing 730.
730. Come on now.
Yeah. I'll ask you guys, would you take that employee? Like I would,
yeah,
all day long. And they said, yeah, no, sorry, we can't do that. And I found out in that interview that the next guy underneath me was doing about 230 billable hour, and he was at like 23 an hour. So I figured 25 was okay, right? Like I could get there. But they said no, and I said, okay, and back was up against the wall, and I had all the leverage in the world to go out and do it. And I said, okay, now I'm your competition. And I went out and bought a $2,000 van and went to work. I didn't know anybody here. I didn't, it was easy in New Jersey because everybody needs a plumber, and all my friends' parents and their friends and just the community that I grew up in was using me. So I thought it would be that easy here, and it wasn't. So I dabbled with digital marketing and got a few calls. I joined a BNI, all that stuff, right? And I had zero capital. I think I had like $10,000 in the bank, and I didn't borrow anything for the first 3 years. And the first 3 years was a little bit different, right? I don't want to say a struggle because I was having fun. But at the same time, it was like, the economy was starting to come out of 2008. So it was starting to go on a trajectory. And I remember like, I after about a year and a half, my partner at the time, he wasn't like, I didn't start HVAC right away, but my partner in the company called me, and his boss suddenly passed away like that.
Wow.
And he was doing HVAC, and he called me and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to feed my family. I said, I don't know either, but can you start Monday? And I went for it, right? And that's some of the biggest things that I remember is working alongside of him and just having fun. Like, it wasn't about how much money we were making. It wasn't about systems and processes. It wasn't about any of that stuff. We just got up every single day, handled the calls that were in front of us. If there was no calls, one of us was trying to drum up some calls. And shortly after, we hired a couple employees. Like, now we're 3 years in, we had like 8 or 9 employees. And then it was like, okay, things are working out. Our digital marketing started working. Our word of mouth started working. He was here longer than I was, so people knew him, and he had a pretty good following. So we just said, okay, now maybe it's time to expand a little bit further and borrow some money, right? Get some trucks, get a warehouse, all those things. And so we just started doing it. But me and him stayed in the field for 9 years, and I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit, but that was really how we started it. And then, we started with the hiring and hiring the wrong people, and then finding some good people. And, it was a lot of trial and error. But again, I go back to me and him had so much fun, like it did not seem like work. And I think that's probably why I stayed in the truck for so long, was because it was just fun. I'm very ADD and, all over the place. And for me to be in a different location every single day was great, right? Like I don't like to be stagnant. I don't like to be behind a desk. I like to move. And, that's what we did. And, we really, I think we were up to like 27 employees, and I was like, I might need a manager, and I was running it just like most entrepreneurs, Garrett. I'll be honest with you. It was the bank account's going up, we're doing great. Bank account's coming down, we're freaking out. We're trying to throw anything that we can at the wall and see if it sticks.
I want to pause you real quick because I think this is really important for them to understand. And you're kind of saying it without saying it. Like, how long did it take before you're like, okay, I actually have something serious here, and it's more of like a business than it is a job, right? Even when you had employees, you were on the truck, and so it was kind of still like a job, right?
Yeah.
Like, at what point did you say, hey, I got something here, and I have to start figuring out how to treat this differently?
Yeah, and I mean, before I figured that out, what I was doing was throwing things against the wall, right? And I had the concept of, okay, hire an employee, increase marketing. Buy a new truck, increase marketing. I was just doing things that kind of came naturally to me because I wasn't asking for any advice. I didn't have the luxury of all these podcasts and coaches like you available, stuff like that. I didn't have those luxuries, or at least I didn't know about them, right? And I think that's more what it was, because they were out there. Nexstar was around, some of these other bigger ones were around, but I wasn't in a place to do that. What really happened for me was I had to get humble, Garrett. That was the biggest thing for me, and the catalyst in my whole journey was I had to get humble. And I was riding a high of like anything I threw against the wall, it was sticking. Like, I made some mistakes. Don't get me wrong. Like, I didn't get paid on jobs because my contracts were shitty. Like, I had employees steal from me. I had employees, go into Home Depot with my uniform on and steal something, and they catch them, with my truck driving away. And, so I had those things going on, but I was handling them. I was well in the truck, still handling them, right? Like most operators do, right? Like most business owners, they're afraid to get out of the truck. Like, the old saying of, if you want it done right, do it yourself, I think should be burned and never said again. Because that's like, we didn't get into business to do everything.
Right.
We got into business to have more time, to be with our families, to make a great living, to not have stress, not lose our hair, not turn gray, all the things. Like when you are the business, you don't eat right, you don't go to the bathroom when you need to, you're constantly thinking about all the things. And it really boils down to you don't have things in place to actually, you don't have a business, you have a job.
Yes.
And so really what it took for me was I had to get seriously humbled. And February of 2020, I acquired a company. We were doing about 12 million a year in sales. And again, this is all stuff that came naturally to me and things that I was just doing, right? Like I wasn't reading books. I wasn't listening to podcasts. I was just going to work every single day. Selling jobs, installing, plus I had, people behind me. I had about 70 employees at the time. So we bought a fireplace company. We were doing plumbing, heating and air, sewer and drains, underground, boilers, snow melt, and then we decided to add fireplaces. Oh, we were also doing duct cleaning too. We decided to add fireplaces because it was complementary. And we'd get a lot of calls for them anyway, so we were like, okay, this would be awesome. And I always had a vision of having a showroom. And this company had a showroom already. And I'm like, oh, we can mix plumbing in there in a corner. And people come through with looking for a fireplace. Oh, you guys do plumbing? Oh, I could use a mini split. I use my fireplace a lot because that area is, cold in the winter, but hot in the summer. So we could cross over really well. So we did that. And then March of 2020, everybody knows what happened.
Yep, COVID.
Right. And that humbled me more than anything ever in my life. Not having a kid, not getting married, none of that stuff, that humbled me because it was the first time in my life that I opened my eyes and I was scared. Before that, I was never scared. I was like, I'll just get in a truck and I'll make money. And I was good at it. When that happened, I said, I don't know what's going to happen. It was the first time in my career that I didn't know what was going to happen. And it made me reach out. I'll never forget, I'd hired my sister that February before we bought the fireplace company. And I reached out to her and we came up with this whole business plan. And I look back on it and I'm like, I didn't even know I had that in me. And we knew where we were going to cut costs, people that we may lay off. And then I remember saying, there's two things that we have to do. Well, three things. We have to cut where we can. Market, we're going to triple down on marketing. Whatever we're doing now, we're going to triple down on it. And we got with our marketing company and, came up with a game plan for that. And then the last thing was, we're going to find some help. We're going to find a mentor. And I didn't know it at that time, but that was literally the catalyst of why I'm sitting here right now. So June of 2020, after kind of that's been going on for a while, we signed up with a mentor. And literally from that point on, so the end of 2020, June of 2020 is when we signed up for the mentor. Was a new surge came into me, right? Like I was really excited. I'm paying all this money for this mentor and I'm like, I'm going to get an ROI. Like I'm really good at figuring out, especially when I'm paying for something, how to get an ROI from it. So I'm like, he's got all these other ideas that I'd never thought of. And I'm like, oh, this is great. So I'm cherry picking all these things, like started sending gift boxes to my clients and doing just different things, right? But what I didn't realize was that at this, December, the end of the year, I didn't realize I wasn't focused on the right things. And I was turning, we were doing great, but I'd come out of the truck that year, bought another company, COVID happened, signed up with a mentor, doing the wrong things, and then the end of the year comes and I'm down $500,000. First time ever. Out of a truck to, consistently 30 to 35% profit every year to negative. And the big realization there, I was the business. Me and my partner were the business. And it took all those things to really wake us up, right? And then, so then we started to stop focusing on the wrong things and we started focusing on the right things. cleaned up our numbers, built out a budget. And that's when, COVID happened. That opened my eyes. And then I got slapped with a $3.4 million class action lawsuit. And that's actually what made me say, okay, let me see what the business is worth. Right. And that year, 2021, is when we put it out there to see what it was worth. We were doing about 2% profit. So not great. Once that happened and they told me I was only worth a fraction of what I actually sold for, we went to work. Then it was like, okay, I brought my whole team in alongside my sister, and we started to really dive in even deeper, not just the numbers, but looking at every single area and where we could improve. And it wasn't just us, we bred that into our culture too. And everybody in the leadership team was thinking all on the same page, all firing in the same direction. And they were looking for the things that we were looking for. And then, the lower level employees, they started to follow suit. So it all trickled down. And then in 2023, we sold, so hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. and thank you for sharing that, right?
Yep.
It really was your entire journey. And I love everything that you talked about. Let me follow up with a couple of smaller questions. So you talked about being at a 2% margin. When you sold, what were your margins at?
I was at 12%. 12%. We were trending. Our last month, I think we hit 18%.
Okay.
And the last month of being in business, when I owned the business, was our best month ever in company history.
Wow.
Yeah.
So definitely trending upwards, and you 6x'd your profitability, which is huge.
Yep. In 1 year.
That's massive. If you were, again, to look back, which I know you've done multiple times at your business, you've talked about some catalysts or some points where, like, hey, fork in the road, I got to make a decision here, right? How important do you think it is as a business owner, right? So if somebody's listening or watching the show, how important is it for them to understand where the business is going, right? Because you talked about having fun with your partner and in the truck and it's growing and everything, but you didn't really have a clear direction on where you're going. Like, how important would that be for a business owner to have?
Look, I firmly believe, and I tell people all the time, it's like, do what you love in the business, hire everything else out, right? Like, I loved being in the field. I loved, being in homes. I loved doing the work. If I were to, I wouldn't do that right now, but if I had to go back and do it differently from day one, I would have still done that. I would have still been in the field for 9 years, but I would have known my numbers way before then. Because, you don't, if you ever do want to exit, you can be in a truck, but you've got to almost separate those numbers out because they don't want to see that. The year that I sold, I took like 150 days off of work. And they knew that. They loved that I wasn't there every single day. And if they had a question, my team answered it, wasn't me, right? And if anybody in the company had a question, they weren't coming to me. There was somebody else, depending on where they were at, there was 5 or 6 layers before it came to me. If it got to me, it was very serious, like that lawsuit or something along those lines, like something that they had already tried to figure out, but couldn't get there. And it was very seldom that they would come to me with things. And I had things in place of like, hey, if this happens, do this, systems and processes. But beyond that, like, you can refund up to this amount. Like, if the building's burning down, call me, like, we had checks and balances everywhere. But that's it. If someone's going to buy a company, if I were to look at a company right now and I want to buy it, I don't want to buy a job. I want to buy a business.
Yeah.
Okay. And if the owner is the business, it's not worth a lot. Okay, so you have some inventory, you have some trucks. I can go get that with a bank tomorrow. What they're really looking at is the systems and processes, your people, your marketing, obviously database. If you've got a membership program, even better. Residual income is huge. But those are the things that they're looking for, and they want to know if you're not there anymore, what's the business going to do? And by not being there 150 days, like, they knew like business was going to do exactly what it was doing, whether I was there or not. So yeah, really interesting.
Well, let's talk more to the newer business owner, right? And I won't say brand new, because brand new shouldn't really be thinking too much about the exit.
Sure.
But let's say you're an established business, right? And you're growing. At what point do you believe that a business owner should start to think about structuring their business for an exit?
Yeah, I mean, it's typically we say if you're going to exit a company, it's going to take you 2 to 3 years of planning and then getting it there. Theoretically now, I have interest in a couple businesses. I'm working on getting them ready to exit tomorrow, because if you're ready to exit tomorrow, you're going to run like a well-oiled machine. No matter what, whether you're thinking about exiting today or not, you're going to exit someday. You're going to either pass away, pass it to your kids, or sell it. There's 3 ways. That's it. So might as well have a plan in place. And like, I don't care if you just started the business or you're 10 years in, 20 years in, you should still have that exit plan in place. And it doesn't have to be, if you're only 1 guy or 2 guys, 3 guys, it doesn't have to be like, I'm going to exit for millions and millions of dollars. It could just be like, this is the process that I'm going to follow. Or I want to leave it to my kids. But do you want to leave your kids the headache that you have right now? Or do you want to leave them something clean, right? Like that, I think about that, right? Like if I had to go back and reverse it and not sell the business and just pass it on to generations, it's like, I would want my kids to pick up with ultimate success than have to fall on their face a little bit. But I also think that, looking back on all the things that I went through, and it happened to me, it was the first and only time that it happened that made me look at everything, was if you're losing money, you gotta stop. You gotta stop and figure that out. And everybody says, well, I'll get a loan. Somebody will invest with me and this and that. Money will never fix a business. I don't care what the business is. Unless you're going to scale, money will not fix the business. If you don't fix those holes, whatever dollar amount you get is just going to go away in a short amount of time. So when you ask about when should someone look at their business, I think you should constantly be looking at your business. I think you should always have an exit plan in place or working towards an exit plan, whether you're startup or been doing it forever. And then if you're losing money, and it doesn't have to be like, if you're working in the business, the chances of you losing money are slim because your overhead is lower. So remove yourself from the business or separate it out and say, okay, is the business profitable without this piece? If the answer is no, how do you get that business profitable without that piece? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And I love you keep bringing the financials into this, because a lot of owners, from what I've seen, I know you've seen it as well, is they treat their business like a job, right? Which is money in, money out, versus understanding like, hey, there's cash flow cycles. Hey, there's going to be issues with payments. Hey, there's going to be, returns or refunds or different things that are going to happen in the business. And if you aren't treating it like a business, you're going to have the money problems.
A lot of small business owners, and I say this with all due respect because I did it myself, they take too much from the business because they're worried about paying taxes on it, or that's what they have to do, right? What I've found out is actually you devalue your business by doing that. If you're not categorizing things right, or you wait till November and go buy a bunch of stuff so you don't have to pay taxes and then return it in January, like they know that you're doing that, by the way. But you're devaluing your business. So when you do stuff like that and you go to get a loan, they're looking at all those things. So for loan purposes, as well as if you want to exit, you should categorize those things the right way. There's multiple different ways if you want to save taxes to do that legally. To do that, you could set up sub companies, maintenance companies. There's different strategies. You can pay your kids. There's the Augusta law. I can go on and on and on and on. A lot of this stuff I learned after I sold, and I say this because I left a boatload of money on the table, right? And I wanted to. I constantly reflect back because I'm not done. I'm still working in businesses, just not my own right now. And I constantly want to evolve that because I had a great first one. I want to have an even better second, third, fourth, fifth exit. Like it's once you have that entrepreneur spirit, you don't shut it off.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, because you're kind of heading down that path anyway. If you were to start over again, right, with running the business, what would you do differently? Because you're basically teaching other business owners to do this right now.
Yeah, Garrett, that's a great question, and I often reflect on that. I'm like, oh, was I too little, too late? Well, obviously not. Like I'm sitting here right now talking about this story, right? Like I figured it out. I can tell you it's a lot easier to do it in the beginning, and people probably have said that to you before, and your mom and dad has probably said that to you. Do it while you're young, so because it's so much harder when you're old, right? Like I think about if I would have got that mentor, and I'm not just saying a mentor, right? But if I would have got that mentor and had a lot of those realizations earlier on, where would I have been? Like I did it to 20 million, but I look back and I'm like, if I would have found that 5 years sooner, I would have been at 40 easy, So I'm now thinking, okay, the next time that I do this, like step by step, what would I do? Like, first of all, I wouldn't do a startup company. God bless you guys. You guys are crushing it. I believe in you. I'm past that point. I don't like startup companies. It's a lot of work, and keep doing it. It does pay off. I've done the 100-hour weeks, 120-hour weeks. I believe in you guys. It's a lot of work. So I wouldn't start one on my own, but I'd probably look for something that's, a few years in, or someone that's doesn't have an exit plan and wants to get out, right? But I'd look at, do they know their numbers? What's their profitability? Are they priced correct? I think those are the three where I would start. Like the numbers tell a story, right? Every single business out there, I don't care the size of it, whether it's Amazon, Google, or, Joe's Plumbing, that's two guys. The numbers tell a story, and you can find out so much. They don't lie. They absolutely don't lie. So if you have an understanding of the numbers, you can see what is going on in the business, right? And if you don't know how to read a P&L, you better learn quickly. Like, I don't care. Like, again, I didn't do well in school. I wasn't great at it. I didn't want to go to college. This is something that's so important. So you don't have to do it. You don't have to input all the numbers, but you have to understand what that report is in order to function as a business owner, that you're not just throwing things against the wall and hoping that they stick. Sometimes you're going to get lucky, let's face it. But it only takes that one or two times where you're not lucky that'll wipe you out. So why not understand that stuff, right? I think that, stop listening to all the noise, right? Like there's some things that you want to listen to and implement, and there's some things that, you're just going to have to go take action on, right? Like I hear this is a common thing all over the place. People say, well, it's so hard to find good employees. I hear that from just about every business owner I come across. And I'm like, how did I do it? I had 130 employees, and my culture was one of the best. I built the consistency. I built a great onboarding process. And again, we had fun. We had core values. We had a vision. We showed people what was in it for them. Like it wasn't just, hey, come to work. This is your job. It was like, hey, you come here. We've got a career path to you making over 6 figures a year. Like you got great benefits. You got 401k. And even before I had that, I listened in every single interview, because I did a lot of the interviews. And you've probably heard hire slow, fire fast, right? But I listened in a lot of interviews, and I looked for common things, right? And one of the biggest things that I heard from all the guys that I interviewed was they were tired of the false promises, right? So their old boss promised them this and didn't deliver. So that was one of my big core values in my business, is like, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. It's going to get done.
Yeah.
You may have to nudge me, but it's going to get done.
Yeah.
And everybody knew that in the whole culture. I also had an open door policy. And it was, you know, more of the sense of like, again, listening in interviews is like, if you see something in the business broken or want to change somewhere, bring it to us. Don't, you have a voice. And that was a big catalyst for finding people. But, you know, stop listening to all what everybody else is saying. Figure it out for yourself too sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that. And I want to piggyback off that with another question.
Sure.
How important is culture when growing a business?
You know, the trades industries it's great. You know, it's done a lot for me, and I love the trade industry. So you gotta, like, I'm not saying go run your business like Google and put a gym in and all these fancy things. No, but you gotta be different just a little bit, because why is someone going to choose you over your competition? Right. And I promise you, it's not money. It's not 401k. It's not benefits. It's not, you gotta have a real understanding of what the people that work for you or potentially are going to work for you, what they want. For some of them, it is money, but you got to know and understand that to be able to work with them. For some of them, it's time, it's family. You got to know and understand that to be able to work with them. So I think it's if you want to scale, it's super important. If you want to constantly have a revolving door, do what everybody else is doing. But if you want to have longevity with your employees' retention and scale, like they've got to believe in your vision, and they got to believe in that vision like it's their own vision, and they are going to be a part of it. And that all is a part of the culture. If they don't feel that they're a part of it and they're working towards something, then, you know, it's just a job to them. And we had those guys. You know, you're always going to have your bottom 20, but you're constantly trying to improve your bottom 20. I didn't focus on those bottom 20. I focused on the middle 60, right? Because I had the top 20. The middle 60 is where I focused because I wanted to move them into the top 20. The bottom percentage, I really, like, we worked with them, you know, and some of them did move up into that middle. Some of them worked their way out, and that's just the way it was. But I was also constantly going back and reviewing who was working for me and where they sat. You know, that was the back end of the culture. It was like, do they fit in the culture? That was number one. Where are they at? Are they in that 20, 60, or the top 20? And then evaluating, okay, we've got applications. You know, do we want to replace that bottom 20 at all? Like, does this person have the potential to move up? So we're constantly evaluating that. So to answer your question, I mean, that's the long version, but I mean, culture is everything. And like, it doesn't take much. Like, I used to think that you had to take them to fancy dinners and, you know, give them a huge Christmas bonus and all that stuff. No, you know, just be different and show that you care. I think if you go and ask some of the people that worked for me why they loved working for me so much or working with the company so much, is because we cared. I mean, I helped people get their first house, get their new car that they wanted, dream vacation, and hopefully change their lives forever. And that was my ultimate goal, right? I also loved, like, you know, I used to think it was the big things and giving them money, but I found out it's sometimes, more often than not, the little things, Garrett. Like, I remember, like, my guys would be in attics in 100-degree weather. So I went out of my way and went on Amazon and got those cool rags, you know, and gave them to them. Hey guys, you know, I know you're in an attic and it's really hot out. Here's just a little something. That went $3 cool rag was better than their $5,000 Christmas bonus because I cared. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference, right? Like, if you can find those little things that shows that you care, it goes along. I used to tell my sales guys, you want these guys to call you out to get you in front of a potential sale, bring them lunch. Go help them on a job. You know, don't go golf when you're in between calls or whatnot. Go actually be a part of what they're doing and care. I had one guy that did it, and he was one of the top guys. You know, he loved giving back to those guys because ultimately at the end of the day, that's what made him money. You know, there's a fine line, right? You want to treat, people say, oh, it's a family business and we're going to treat our employees like family. Yeah. Have you ever tried to hold your brother accountable? There's a fine line.
Exactly.
Right. So
I love it. I love it. It's a great answer. And it's so important. It's funny that like I have contractors that I work with that I'll tell them something and then they'll nod their head like I understand this, but they won't do something about it. And then they go somewhere else and they hear it or they watch it or somebody else says it and then the light bulb goes on, right? So I love the fact that you are sitting here and I don't have to say anything because you are saying all the same things that I say, right? So I love the fact that, again, we're aligned. But if you're listening or watching, I want you to understand something is success leaves clues, right? Like you're listening to someone who has exited their business for 8 figures. If you want to exit your business for 8 figures, he's laid it out for you, right? And I think number one and most important that you talked about was understanding your numbers.
yeah.
None of us are math whizzes, right? It's like, it's like pulling teeth. It's hard. But if you can understand the basics, then you can make decisions, like you said, off the data, right? The facts. I think the second thing that you talked about is that's super important is this idea of building a team, right? And people aren't looking for a job, right? I had a gentleman once tell me, he goes, you're going to have 1 of 2 employees. You're going to have the employee who's looking for their next job, and you're going to have the employee that's looking for their next house.
Yep.
And it's a completely different employee. So what culture are you building to attract the person that's looking for their next house, that long-term stability?
100%.
So I love it. Okay, as we start to wrap things up, I always like to ask this question at the end, okay? You got to start over. All you got with you is all the skills that you've obtained over the years.
Sure.
And $1,000. What are you doing with that $1,000?
I probably would buy some sort of a book or get involved with some sort of a group with a portion of it. The other portion I would, figure out, like, I mean, that's all I have. Like, I don't have anything else. I have $1,000. That's it. That's an interesting question. I mean, I would probably try to figure out how to do plumbing on a electric scooter or something like that and buy a couple wrenches or, I mean, you talking about going in business for yourself again with $1,000?
You're starting over.
Yeah.
$1,000.
Honestly, I'd probably build out an LLC, and then go to people that are in business and say, hey, is there anything that my skills could work for? So I would actually work for other companies to, as a 1099 subcontractor. I'd buy very minimal tools and I'd say, look, I'm good at sales. I'm good at this. Could I work for you as a 1099? As I was working for them, so let's say they pay their guys $30 an hour. I ask somewhere 60, 65 an hour. And then as I'm doing that, I would go find probably a BNI or something along the lines of that. If I didn't have a computer or anything, Facebook's, mute point. But I mean, that's realistically what I would do is I would work alongside someone that didn't know or have the skills that I have. I would try to, but I would still be in business for myself.
I love it. You're basically saying value add, right?
Yeah.
Take the 20 years of experience that you have and say, this is how it could help you in your business.
Yeah.
That's unique. We haven't had anybody answer that way.
Yeah.
So I love that. But you also mentioned like, hey, I know where I can go to find the jobs, right? Yeah. And a networking group is a great place for you to do that, especially if you're service focused.
Yep.
For sure. I love that. Well, Chuck, appreciate you being here and sharing your knowledge, your skill set, and ultimately, your path and your journey. So if someone's interested in getting a hold of you, having a conversation with you, which we didn't really talk too much about it, but if you're looking to you mentioned it a few times, if you're looking to get to the point to sell your business, like Chuck's your guy, right? He'll help you get positioned for that. So if someone's wanting to get a hold of you, how would they do that? Yeah,
in sell your business or acquire another business. I love those type of things. Facebook's the best way. Hopefully you can spell my name right on here.
We'll put it down below. We'll make sure you got it spelled right.
Yeah, find me on Facebook, DM me. You can get me on our website, opusgolds.com, opusgolds.com. There's a link to my calendar. You can book a call with me, strategy session. Yeah, would love to chat.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks again for sharing. And again, if you're listening or you're watching, like, you know the drill. It's inspiring, right? It's motivating. But at the end of the day, what do you want out of your business, and what's the next thing that you need to do? If you were to take anything away from Chuck, I would take 2 things away. Number 1, the importance of culture. Number 2, know your numbers. All right. You guys know what time it is, though. It's time for you to get after it. 3, 2, 1. Off you go.
If you're serious about growing your contracting business, and let's be real, if you made it to the end of this episode, you are. We've got a free community built just for you. Inside, you'll get access to exclusive courses, live coaching calls, and in-person events that will give you the tools to scale with confidence. Click the link below to join us, and I'll see you on the inside.